they'll all be wearing their green noses, is the Roundtable Bone Marrow Laboratory Appeal Trust for research into bone marrow disease. And it's rather appropriate to grace the occasion. At the Phoenix Park on Sunday, we have our next guest. She is here to start the whole thing running on next Sunday, the fun run. And it's appropriate because the movie that she is most renowned for in Ireland is a rather agricultural piece of work called The Quiet Man. But although you may remember her especially in Ireland for that, she actually made 55 movies. She starred in 55 movies, and she was known as the Queen of Technicolor. And indeed, it was said about her at the time that if Technicolor hadn't been invented, they would have to invent it specially for her, to take in her beauty and her lovely red hair and all the rest of it. Well, on a brief visit to Ireland, she's going back to America on Monday. Would you welcome, please, Maureen O'Hara? How are you doing, Dave? Because that's the way it's going. Good to see you. Starting the fun run on Sunday. Yeah, and then you go back to America when?
On Monday, because I have lots of work to do. I have to do an interview about John Wayne out in California, and then I have to come back to New York to do some fundraising for the new museum in Aviation Museum in Foynes, and then I'll be back to Ireland for the summer and for my golf tournament in Glengariff.
Okay.
On the 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th of July.
What was your favourite movie, Maureen? Favorite?
Favorite of all.
Of all 55, what's your favourite?
The Quiet Man.
Quiet Man would have to be.
Yes.
Quiet.
Well, number one, we came home to Ireland to make the movie, and also it took... Do we have a few minutes to tell the story about how hard it was to raise the money?
It took you 5 years, didn't it?
No, 84 to 51. That's 7 years, if they taught me my arithmetic properly at the Sisters of Charity.
44 to 51.
Yes.
44 to 51, yes.
In 1944, I was making a movie called Spanish Main with Paul Henreid. And John Ford was always very reputed to not like to wear fancy clothes. And he always wore white flannels and a dark navy blue jacket. And when his wife would buy him new clothes, he'd burn holes in it so they'd look old. Anyway, he always looked a little bit disreputable, and he wore an old felt hat that my father sold him in Woodrow's on Westmoreland Street. Anyway, he came to the studio, and there was a new young policeman on duty, and he thought this dreadful-looking, disreputable man couldn't have any reason to be in the studio, and he wouldn't let him in. The number 2 man at RKO at that time had a very strange name. His name was Joseph Nolan. And he came down on the set to see me, and he said, "Mother of God," he said, "John Ford came to see you, and they wouldn't let him into the studio. What are we going to do?" And he's furious. He said, "Please call him, calm him down, and ask him to come back tomorrow, and we'll put out the red carpet." So I called John Ford, and he was a vain, old, wonderful old man, and the idea of the red carpet really suited him down to the ground. So he came back the next day, and they really did put out the red carpet. And he had come to the studio to see me to have a handshake contract in 1944 to make The Quiet Man in Ireland as soon as we could raise the money. He also had a handshake contract with John Wayne, Barry Fitzgerald, Victor McLaughlin. So we started trying to raise the money. I shouldn't say we, because that was his job and his producer's job, who was a wonderful gentleman in Hollywood. And each year, we held the summer open. And each year, no money. Couldn't make the movie. The script was taken to Fox, RKO, Warner Brothers, all of the studios. They read it, and they said, "Silly, stupid little Irish story. It'll never make a penny. It'll never be any good." And the years slipped by, and John Wayne and I used to go into the studio and say, "Mr. Ford, if you don't hurry up, I'll have to pay the widow woman's role, and Duke will have to pay Victor McLaughlin's role, because we'll be too old." So finally, John Wayne, who was at that time under contract to a minor studio, in spite of the fact that he was the top star in the world, called Republic Studios. And the head of the studio was a man called Yates, and he said, who came from the button industry, incidentally. And he said to Mr. Ford, he said, or Pappy as we called him, he said, let me take the script in to Herb Yates, or Old Man Yates as he was called, and see what happens. And in desperation, Ford said, all right. So Mr. Yates read the script, and his reaction was exactly the same. He said, that silly, stupid little Irish story would never make a penny, but to snag John Ford and Marion C. Cooper, the two top men in Hollywood, he was willing to gamble. And he said, very well, I will finance it on one condition, that you make a Western first with the same cast, same director, same everybody, to finance and make up for the money I'm going to lose on The Quiet Man. So we made Rio Grande to raise the money to make The Quiet Man, and we made it in 1951, and Mr. Herb Yates left a great estate behind him when he died, thanks to that silly little Irish story.
Isn't that a lovely story? Great story. Great story. Roll it there, Roisin. Roll it there. Roll it there. Look at this. There you go.
Your
There you
in-laws
go.
are coming to visit you. Squire darling. You owe me 350 pounds. Let's have it.
So the IRA's in this too, huh?
If it were Red Will Danaher, not a scorched stone of your fine house would be standing.
A beautiful sentiment.
I'll pay you. Never.
That breaks all bargains. You can take your sister back. It's your custom, not mine. No fortune, no marriage. We call it quits.
You do this to me? Your own wife? After
It's
what?
done.
There's your dirty money. Take it. Count it, you spawn. And look, if ever I see that face of yours again, I'll push that through it.
Charge it!
I'll be going on home now. I'll have the supper ready for you.
And she walked down the hill with her head held high. You were a fiery little woman, weren't you, be the holy? You were a fiery dame, and she shook you around a lot.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Well, I always wanted, when I was a little girl, I always wanted to be a boy, because I didn't think it was fair that the boys got to box the fox, if you remember what that was, rob the orchard. And the boys got to play football, and I was mad about soccer. And then I found out later on that to be a girl was pretty wonderful. So I'm satisfied I'm a girl.
Is it true
May
that...
I interrupt you a minute?
What?
I have to, please.
What?
I'd like to say that I came over, and I just arrived yesterday, just specially to be with Gay Byrne tonight, and also to work for the National Dairy Council and for the Round Table for the Bone Marrow Lab Appeal. And I don't think all of you realise how terribly important a bone marrow bank is. Because when Ireland sets up its own bone marrow bank and has its own volunteers, it will then give Ireland the right to call on any and every country in the world that has a bone marrow bank and get bone marrow in emergency situations sent to us as quickly as possible. And think of all the little children and the old people and the middle-aged people that their lives can be saved by this. So any chance you get, please contribute, and please come tomorrow to the park. And don't forget,
Sunday.
The fun day is all over Ireland tomorrow, not just tomorrow.
Sunday, isn't it?
Sunday.
It's Sunday. Yeah, tomorrow's Saturday. It's tomorrow Saturday. You only just
and
got
I'd
in
like
from
to
America.
say
Yeah,
that,
Sunday.
you know, in my family, there's been an awful lot of cancer. In my aunts, my uncles, my mother, and in our family, there's two of us, myself and my sister Florrie. I don't know if any of you here remember my sister Florrie, but we're happy and thrilled to be alive. And don't ever be afraid to go and have any ache or pain or lump or bump checked. Don't be afraid that the doctor's going to tell you you have it. If you have it, do something about it. Believe in God and fight like a tiger.
That's all right. That's all right. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. What I was going to say to you was, is it true that you told the legendary John Ford that he was a son of a bitch? You did, Maureen.
I did.
You did.
Yes,
tell
I
me
did.
about it. Tell me how you got away with it. That's what I really want to know.
Where did you find out about that?
I heard about that. Go
Gosh,
on.
he's been doing his homework.
How did you do it?
He's a nasty man over here. When we shot the scene, now I didn't know he was going to ask me this, but when we shot the scene on the in the cart at the races, where my hat was left on the stick because John Wayne, in the plot to get himself and myself married, he left my hat on the stick. Well, we shot the scene on the cart, and normally any director with a woman with long hair would put the wind machine in front of her and blow all the hair backwards. And John Ford, and afterwards when I saw it on the screen, I realized what a master he was. He was a fabulous director. He put the wind machine behind me, and I had very long hair, and my hair was blowing all forward, if you see the film, and it was lashing across my eyeballs like a whip, almost cutting my eyes to shreds. And I kept squinting and winking and squinting. And Ford said to me, he stopped everything. He says, "What the so-and-so do you think you're doing? Open your so-and-so and so-and-so eyes." And by this time, he and John Wayne had driven me almost mad. And a temper would last so long. My temper wouldn't last any longer. And I put my hands on the side of the cart and I leaned forward. And I said, "What would a bald-headed old son of a bitch know about hair lashing across his eyeballs?" Wait a minute. But what after
This
that,
was to John Ford, and nobody spoke to John Ford.
After that, I thought, oh my God, what have I done? I'm going to get fired. I'll be out of the picture in 5 minutes. And I sat there. I watched him, and it seemed like an eternity. He checked every face and every pair of eyes on the floor, up above, and made his decision not to fire me, but to laugh. And I thought, thank God I'm saved, because everybody started to roar with laughter.
You wouldn't do it too often, though. You wouldn't do
Oh,
it.
I'd never try it again.
How much did you get for The Quiet Man, Maureen?
Well, in those days, John Ford made John Wayne and myself take a cut because we wanted to make the picture so badly, and we'd waited so many years, and I had taken the script in shorthand and I typed it, and it meant so much to both of us. John Wayne received no share, no percentage, nothing, $100,000, and I got $75,000. Nobody'd worked for that time.
No share, no nothing.
No
That was
share,
it.
nothing. That was
Finished.
it.
That's about like 40 grand, 40,000 pounds.
I don't know what it is in today's money.
It would be. And that presumably was a huge amount of money at that time.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
It was a lot of money.
And how much would you have got for Jamaica Inn? Now, that was one of your first.
£5 a week.
You're joking. With Charles Lawton?
And both feet are on the ground.
£5
£5 a week
for Jamaica Inn?
for Jamaica Inn. But I was thrilled. I was
You
very happy. The
must-
first job I had in Ireland, out of school, I got £1 a week.
Yeah.
And I was working in a laundry.
And what did you get? What did you get? What did you get in the Abbey Theatre then?
£1 a week.
£1 a week in the Abbey. £1.
£1 a week.
You must be mesmerised now when you see the amounts of money which are paid to make movies and paid to the big stars.
I, frankly, to be very truthful, I think it's sinful. I think they're paid way too much money. I think that money would be better off spent within the film and making it better. And because when it's all finished with and you've paid the taxes to the government, there's not that much left anyway. It is only an ego trip. I'm sorry. I think people are way overpaid in the picture industry today.
And Maureen, did you get the star treatment now? Did you get the limo and the yes, Miss O'Hara, no, Miss O'Hara,
Yes.
3 bags full?
Yes,
Yes.
I sure did.
Yes. And did you
Yes.
succumb to that? Did you at any
No,
stage begin to take that for real? I doubt that you did.
No, I
doubt
had
that you
5 brothers and sisters and a fabulous mother and father. And I was never, ever allowed to step out of line. And when I used to make remember those desert pictures where I was always on the camel? They used to call me Maureen Sahara. And my brothers and sisters always teased me and always kept me in line. And besides, everybody in our family did something wonderful. I don't know if you remember or anybody out there remembers. My mother was known as the most beautiful woman in Ireland, and she really was, in heart and mind and soul and thought, and as a mother. And Daddy was the most handsome man. Daddy looked like a cross between Spencer Tracy and Tyrone Power.
That's not bad.
And all the ladies on Churchtown Road were in love with my father, and all the men were in love with my mother.
And you lived just near the dropping well there, did
Yes, we lived number 13 Churchtown Road, was where I was raised, and I went to the Irish Sisters of Charity in Milltown, and then on to Eccles Street, Dominican College, Eccles Street. And
Anybody from Eccles Street here tonight?
And the boys went to Sing Street.
Anybody went to... did your boys go to Singer?
Yes, my 2 brothers went to
Really?
Singer.
Oh,
yes.
well, then it can't be that bad a family. Did you go to Eccles Street? How are you? How do you do? In what year?
Commercial college.
Commercial
with the nuns,
college.
yeah.
I
But
see.
most of my colleagues from home we went to Glasnevin and they went to Eccles Street.
I see.
No,
yeah.
I went to Eccles Street.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lovely
It
nuns.
showed-
And we used to bicycle all the way from Milltown,
From Milltown to Eccles.
all the way to
right.
Eccles
Sister
Street.
Liguri there was a famous nun.
No, I remember
Yeah.
Sister Ethna that taught English, and a real tough, little short nun that taught Latin. In those days, a girl was let choose between Latin and science, and I dropped science and chose Latin, and then a few
Quite
weeks later
right.
I thought I was mad.
And your mother was a lovely singer. And,
That's right.
And
She was a magnificent contralto.
And you were always into drama, all of you. You
Yes,
were always
the
into
whole,
drama
all
from
the
very
6
beginning.
children, every
Yes,
one of us.
Yes. Now, talk to me about the Duke, John Wayne. You really loved John Wayne, didn't you?
I sure did. He was my best friend, as well as my co-star in 5 movies. I could tell you all kinds of stories about him. I don't know, nice ones and ones with a few short words. I don't know if they're well.
Expletives,
Yes. Is that permitted?
It's it's 11
would?
at night. If they're not
Oh,
able
it
for
is.
it now, they'll never be able for it.
Can I tell one?
Of course, certainly. I'd love you to. Yeah.
We made a wonderful picture, John Wayne and myself, called McClintock, and it was top box office in the whole world. And in that film, there was the great scene where the 2 of us, in a terrible fight between each other, we, with the Indians watching and the cowboys and everything in the film, we slid backwards down into the mud and into a mud pool. So that we would slide, the mud slide was covered with a chocolate filler called either bentonite or bentonite, I'm not sure of the word, because in mud you'd stick, where in this slimy chocolate filler we would skid right down into the mud, and we had to fall under the mud, and it was all over us, top to bottom. And we had to wait for the continuing scene to be done, so we had to stand there and wait. So we were standing, and this mud was revolting. And it was a cold day in Arizona, and the wind was blowing, and it went in here and out here, and this stuff was clammy and wet. And I was standing there thinking, oh, this is awful. I couldn't wait to get rid of it. And one of the prop men on the film, thinking they were doing us a great favor because of the freezing cold wind, even though the sky was blue and the day looked beautiful, put blankets around us. Well, now, let me tell you, the blanket on top of that made all that stuff stick to you, and now it was worse. It went right through our clothes and into our skin, and it was absolutely awful. And I'm standing there, and I turned quietly to Duke, and I said, Mother of God, Duke, I said, this stuff is like bird shite. And he looked at me, and he said, what do you mean, bird shite? Snot.
may I ask, did a girl like you with a lovely upbringing that you had learn a word like birdshite? How common can you be?
Milltown, Dublin.
I only asked. Yes, love. Hello. How are you doing? Second row here, chaps. Yes.
Hello, Maureen. You're very welcome home.
Thank you.
A lady speaker earlier was telling us that she used Flora to keep her complexion looking young. Could you tell us what you used to keep yourself looking young?
Well, the best thing was to have Mommy, our mother, as a mother, and our father as a father. Mommy died of cancer, but even riddled with cancer, she was the most beautiful woman you could imagine. And our father died in his late 90s, and he didn't have a wrinkle in his face. We all look, there's 6 of us, 2 boys and 4 girls, and we all look the same. And first and foremost, it's thanks to our mother and father. And then after that, watching your diet, living a good, clean living, never going to bed if you're a woman with a dirty face, which is terribly important. And so many women, tired at night, go to bed with a dirty face, and that's the worst thing you can do. Wash it before you go to bed.
You must be very careful
But you know,
choosing your parents.
Yes. But she said what kind of stuff?
Flora.
Flora. Well,
cooking oil.
there's a lot of people in the States. There's a very famous place where all the women go to have their faces fixed up and massaged and all that sort of stuff, which is utter rubbish and nonsense. And a friend of mine, whose brother owns a chemist shop, she went there, and this woman was selling little jars of stuff for 30 and 35 pounds a jar. And she brought it home to her brother, who was a chemist, and said, "Would you tell me what this is, please?" And he said, "You've got to be out of your mind. Are you playing a trick on me?" When he analysed it, it was Crisco. $35 or pounds for a little jar that size, like a tablespoonful of Crisco.
What's Crisco?
It's like a lard that's sold in a tin can that you use in baking cookies and cakes and all that sort of thing.
Domestic sort of lard.
Yeah, so imagine it's sort of like...
What was the other stuff?
Flora?
Bit of scent, yeah. Now, Maureen, we all, your husband, Charlie Blair, Lord Reston, was probably the most famous pilot in the entire world.
Yes,
Senior
indeed he
Pan
was.
Am captain, transatlantic for years and years, Air Force pilot, all of that. And you ran your lovely little airline in the Virgin Islands
well,
on
it wasn't little.
Wasn't a little airline, was
no,
it?
we had 26 planes and 22 pilots.
Oh, I didn't realise
Oh,
it was
yes.
that big,
we were the bus line of the Caribbean.
And
We had a flight every 3 minutes.
Where'd you get all those flying boats, for God's sake?
Charlie Blair found them. No matter where you hid them, he found them.
I didn't realise
Oh,
you
yes.
that many. God,
Yes.
that's a big
Oh, no,
airline.
it was a big airline and made a great deal of money.
And is that all finished now? Did you?
Yes. When Charlie died, to prove a point, I ran the airline for 2 years for him. And I was the first woman to be president of an airline in the United States of America. And after that, I realized that it really isn't, truthfully, a woman's job to run a small airline, or a commuter airline, as they call it, because you have to start using the same language that the mechanics and those kind of the people in those jobs use. And you cease then to be a lady. And I decided I'd rather be a lady, and I sold the airline to Resorts International, the big gambling concern in the United States. And now they eventually closed it down, which is a very long story. When I write the story of my life, I'll write all about it.
Yeah, and when did you sell the last plane, for example?
Hopefully, the deal will be closed in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
The last
Yeah,
aircraft.
3 albatrosses, 3 flying planes, flying boats.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, Charlie was not only a great man, he was a great pioneer pilot, the greatest in the world. But he was a gorgeous man and a wonderful man. And in Foynes, when he used to bring in the seaplanes, the local people, the villagers, used to call him the God who walks, and he was.
Now go back to the movies again. You were very fond of working in westerns.
Oh, I loved them.
With or without the Duke.
Yeah.
Why did you love westerns so much?
Well, when I was a little girl and we used to go to the movies, we used to go to the Prinner in Rathmines.
The Princess.
The Princess.
In Rathmines, yeah.
And it was threepence to
down from the
go
Stella.
on Saturday. Yeah. Down
from
towards
the
town.
Stella, that's
yeah.
right, down
And it
the
was
Princess.
threepence on a Saturday afternoon.
Yes.
And usually, because they were programs for young people, they were usually westerns, Laurel and Hardy, and sometimes those marvelous gangster movies with people like George Raft. So I loved gangster movies, and I loved westerns, and I loved Laurel and Hardy.
And so you graduated on to making westerns then because of that?
Yes.
Yeah. But they must have been fun to make then?
Oh, they were great fun. I gather you're leading me into a certain direction.
No, I'm not,
no, you're
particularly. Not particularly.
No, I was trying to think.
No,
what?
because I want to talk to you about Sitting Pretty as well, which is one of my all-time favourite little movies that I remember so well. Clifton Webb and Mr. Belvedere and Looking After Kids and so on. Do you remember that very clearly?
I surely do. That was Clifton Webb, and Robert Young was the father, and wonderful kids played the children, and I don't have a lot of memories about things happening on the set because they were all very, very professional people that worked on that picture. The only thing that I really remember about that, and again, I hope you'll forgive me, it's to illustrate the kindness and concern of the people that work with you on a movie. While we were making that movie, I'm afraid I came down with a dreadful infection in the kidneys. And I was out of work for about a week. And then, of course, they wouldn't put up with it anymore, and I had to go back to work. And one of the men, the prop men on the picture, said, "I'll make you well. I'll fix you." And he brought me a flower vase full of water every half hour. And he stood there and he said, "Drink it." Sometimes it was very hard to get down. And everybody on the set knew when I said, "Gotta go." They opened the door and out I shot. And he did. In 1 week, he made me well.
But just by drinking the water, do you?
Just by drinking the water. I don't know what magic he must have put in the water, but it was just drinking the water. And he did cure me, and he did make me well.
He flushed you out, Maureen.
That's right. That's what he did.
Indeed,
There's nothing wrong with that. It's very good for you.
Indeed, nothing wrong with it. Now, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Do you want to come in too? Sorry, up at the back. Yeah.
Okay, I'd just like to ask Maureen, what does she think of the movies which are being made today?
Yeah.
What's your view on the movies today?
I don't see very many of them, I have to admit. Sometimes I fly so much to so many events that I have to do and charitable things that I have to do all over the place that I only see them on the screen in the airplane. And I must say, I don't approve of the violence. I don't approve of the way they drive cars because they're teaching young people that you spin rubber like that before you start off a car. And I don't approve of some of the explicit scenes in the films because after all, the greatest love stories in the world were made without that. And something was left to the imagination of the people because everybody thinks a different way about what means an awful lot to them in love and in kindness and in warmth. So let each person have their own dream. Why make it so explicit on the screen and, may I say, so very, very ugly? And I don't approve of it.
I'm actually going back a bit, Gabe, but back to the flying. I had the privilege of being in Foynes in County Limerick, and I think it's
when the Sandringham came in,
or 76, when Maureen and Captain Blair flew back the seaplane into Foynes, and it was just a tremendous sight to see it landing in Foynes again, which was the first transatlantic stop, I think, when the seaplane
That's right. Charlie, that was 34 years after Charlie took the last commercial flight out of Foynes and closed the airport. And he went to New York, had to sleep, and he took the first land plane across the Atlantic to land in the new airport Shannon. So he has a double record.
Right. It was a great sight.
Yeah. I came back, I have to say this, I came back yesterday through the courtesy of Aer Lingus. So I'd like to say to Aer Lingus, very thank you very much for bringing me.
Now, you appear to have had a lovely, rosy childhood, Maureen, and you are close to your parents, and they looked after you very well. And you love school, and you've no complaints about the nuns, and incidentally, I
had two teachers I didn't like.
Just two teachers, but they weren't nuns.
No.
The nuns.
Oh no.
Just going back, you dropped in something there about the Quiet Man that you typed all the scripts. You said.
That's right.
Where did you learn to type?
I learned at Dominican College, Eccles Street, and I learned at a school that we used to go to in the late afternoons and in the evening time called Miss Galway's.
Miss Galway.
Galway's.
Was this
It
because...
was called Miss Galway School for Young Ladies.
Yes.
That
yes.
was the
And
real
this,
name of the school.
Was this because your mother said, get yourself a job?
No, Mommy
yourself
knew that all of us were involved or going to be involved with the theatre. And it always worried her that when we go for an interview, and on interviews, the person sitting in the theatre doing the interview can be very cruel. And a young person can come out and maybe dance a few little steps. Maybe you're auditioning to dance, or you're auditioning to be an actor or actress, or you're auditioning to sing. And maybe they'll get 3 notes out, and they'll say, thank you, next please, next please, next. And the person that you watch them, and they're absolutely heartbroken and devastated. And Mommy always said that she never wanted that to happen to us. And she made every one of us have another career, so that if we were turned down, we could hold our head high and walk out and say, well, I can earn my living doing something else.
You could always walk out and say, hump yous, I'm not depending on you. Maureen, a lovely pleasure to have you with us. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Don't forget, Maureen is starting the walk, the NDC Fun Day Walk in the Phoenix Park at 2:30. What are you jumping into your handbag there for? And it's all in aid of the Round Table Bone Marrow Laboratory Appeals Trust. A very deserving. All right. Statistically has some performers leaves in September for Toronto.